And we're back. We are back with another episode of the Quarantine Special Misinformed Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Manveer, and this is my co host, Lamar. In our last episode, we talked about why we are filming this way, and it just looks like we're facing another technical difficulty, as usual. What I want to talk about in this episode is a range of issues that focus specifically on the quarantine and a little bit about the politics of the situations that have been going on now that people are more relaxed into quarantine and panic mode is kind of winding down. Now people are starting to become more politically opportune or taking advantage of the situation. So, Lamar, run down the agenda for us. What are we going to talk about today?
Sure, definitely. So today we're going to be focusing a lot on the expansion to the $2.2 trillion stimulus package that was passed last week or a few weeks ago, from my understanding. And that's due to the fact that there's been a lot of funding that's disappeared, but Congress is trying to expand upon that again. We'll be then looking at the political spell. Within the political world, we're going to be looking at Joe Biden. Uh, Joe Biden has some issues with Donald Trump, specifically with China. And also, we'll be looking at Joe Biden in the realm of the sexual allegations we talked about in the last episode and how that's kind of picked up a bit now. Last time we talked about how the media was pretty much ignoring it, but since then, we actually have some articles from the mainstream media, including New York Times and CNN, MSNBC. So that has changed since our last discussion. But before we go into any of that, let's start from the get-go, the most important stuff, the stimulus package, because again, that is where our country's focused on this pandemic, and a lot of people are really concerned about the economics of it, along with obviously the safety issues as well.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start off with the PPP, Manveer?
Yeah. So what is it called? The
The payroll protection program, yeah.
Payroll Protection Program. And basically, the way it went is like, look, if the government's going to give low to zero interest loans to small businesses in the event that you use 75% of the loan towards actual payroll and paying your employees, well, it's 100% forgiven. So you don't actually have
Yeah.
to pay
So
them
I
back.
I actually have my own personal story with them, if you don't mind,
Yeah, go
Manveer.
ahead. Go ahead, please.
So I've actually, my dad has his own small business, as I've mentioned previously, and we've applied for the loan. So how the loan works is that it looks at your monthly payroll, and it basically multiplies that by two and a half. So if your payroll is $10,000 a month, you'd basically be getting about $25,000. And as you mentioned just a bit ago, if you're spending it on payroll, if you're spending on rent and utilities, like the basic core functions of your business, all that money should be forgiven. So unfortunately, there was a lot of backlog with the banks and how they were receiving guidance from the Federal Reserve on how to allocate these funds.
Hmm.
And because of that, they weren't basically accepting applications at the same time. Wells Fargo was pretty late to the game, and that's the lender for my dad's business. So
Same here.
by the
Yeah.
time we found, by the time we finally submitted our application for this loan, the PPP loan, the Payroll Protection Program loan, uh, the next day we got an email saying that, hey, FYI, maybe you didn't watch the news, but today the Congress announced that funding for this program has ended. So we'll still process your loan, but you're probably not going to get anything. So me and my dad were obviously upset about it. For him, it was a big hit since obviously his business closed since it's a non-essential place, and obviously he still has things he needs to pay in terms of revenue and payroll, and he
Right.
doesn't want
Right.
to get rid of his employees.
Hmm.
But there is good news today. In fact, the White House and Congress say they have reached a deal
Oh.
that would give an extra $400 billion in funding for these small business loans. 100 billion of that $400 billion is going to be going for hospitals, so I guess it's only $300 billion. But again, it's not official. They've just said it's a tentative deal, and if everything goes accordingly, it should get passed tomorrow. So for all the small business owners out there, there is hope. Keep your fingers crossed. And again, this isn't official, but if everything goes well, um, it should be passed tomorrow. But here's part of the controversy I actually want to talk to you about, Manvir, which I found interesting. When the original stimulus package was passed, the $2.2 trillion stimulus, a lot of people in the Congress were saying that it was weird that they were voting on it together. And by together, I mean it should have been two separate bills. There should have been one that's like relief for the general consumers, and one for like the large like corporate bailouts for like the airline industries, for the hotel, for the cruise companies, etc. And people were upset that we should have had rather two separate clean bills. One that's one for the consumers, the $1,200 paychecks, and one for the businesses. And actually, I understand that. Because uh, for the corporations, there should be more oversight of how that money is being allocated, and that makes sense. And I agreed with the Democrats. It should have been a separate, clean bill. That's the terminology I like to apply when it's like
So
only
where
applying to
is
one
this coming
subject.
from? Is there like an actual official or a senator or somebody in the White House or maybe even somebody from the DNC making the claim it should have been two? Or is this just party fanatics on Twitter?
No, no, no. It's from my understanding, it was actually members of the House, like AOC. She actually gave a speech on the House floor saying that it was crazy that this was being passed together and it should have been done separately. So a lot of the underlying roots of what happened in 2008 were being applied in this situation, saying that the same mistakes are going to happen. We're going to give a lot of money. It's not going to be it's going to be unaccounted for, etc. But anyway, and that's not the point I'm trying to get to. The point is that a few days ago they tried to pass this expansion of the PPP loan again, and this time the Republicans said, "Okay, we want to pass a few $100 billion for this program." And the Democrats then once said, no, we're going to block this because we want money to also go towards hospitals. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm in favor of giving money to hospitals as well. They deserve it and they obviously need it as well. But that takes away their whole like integrity when it comes to the idea of wanting a clean bill per se. And again, I know we're talking about the context stimulus, but what is your idea when uh, people in Congress say they want a clean bill? Is that a good strategy? And is that a strategy that politicians should hold?
Yes and no. It depends because right now Congress and the White House need to be an apparatus of pure benchmark speed. And I think the problem is any perception of delay in and of itself is just pure political suicide because any bickering, any political infighting, America is not going to have any toleration for it. I'm not going to have any toleration for it, and I'm not happy with the Democrats on this particular issue. Main reason being is that look, even if you know the Democrats, whether or not the clean bill issue could be adhered to, like for example, like we'll pass $100 billion for healthcare workers in this bill as well, or we'll promise $100 billion down the road, or the Republicans could say, well, we'll do the $100 billion first, and then we'll do the small business. So it just depends on the perception of how the bill is perceived to the average American person. Because if you're just sitting there on the couch watching the news and knowing that your business might go under, or you might not get that paycheck because the employer that you work for didn't get the PPP, and the only reason they're not getting the second wave is because a bunch of Democrats and Republicans can't get on board about what to fund further and how to fund it. I think it's a lose-lose situation for the hospitals, for the businesses, for the average person, and for the political favorability of the senators and congressmen who are trying to work this amongst themselves. And I get now there is a willingness to kind of take a step back and look at the spending that's happening in Washington. I get that more and more Americans have accommodated themselves to living at home and kind of be stuck in this unique situation. So therefore, if we were able to have the American people hold out for 3, 4, 5 weeks, maybe we can hold them out for maybe a day or two, so my party can get the most amount of political clout. Because what a clean bill essentially represents is a no compromise win for your party. So, say for example, you want the Business Protection Act, not the Business Protection Act, but the stimulus package that focused on bailing out of large companies, and then what you have on the other side is a crap ton of legislation that helps out average American working people. Now, the clean bill separation makes it so that the Democrats can claim this as a wholesale victory for their party platform and not be tied into bailing out industries that they opposed bailouts in 2008. Now, due to the fact that the speed needed to be there to help prop up these industries, help those individuals at the same time, they passed the bill in one shot, and which I totally understand. But ideally, every party member probably wishes a clean bill was possible, no compromise situation where the entity you want solved for within one bill. I totally get that sentiment, but now's not the time to be playing party politics. It's all about what gets done fastest, and the fastest way is the one that's going to require compromise and getting your hands dirty. Because yeah, there are going to be election ads down the road saying that, look, you were in support of bailouts for large corporations and hedge funds, and you being a Democrat from a heavy blue state, how do you justify that? Now, obviously, the easy answer is, look, we had to get it done as soon as possible. Those hedge funds own stock in companies that we all work for, and they need to be propped up a little bit in order to make sure that company can readjust its cash revenue. At the end of the day, we still look to help average Americans by sending out $1,200 and now proposing $2,000 a month for the next 2 months. So there are, legitimate reasons why a Democrat could defend themselves against the bill that they voted for in order to kind of save the economy, as it were. But down the road, it's going to become harder and harder. So they're foreseeing that the potential
No, no,
criticism.
and just to break it down for everyone, like I think
Right.
the main key point is urgency. Like, what
Yeah,
is the situation?
exactly. It's all about
And like,
urgency.
I'll give it a much older example, but like for example, the old crime bill that was passed decades ago. In the crime bill, obviously, like people talk about how there were issues involving um, racial discrimination, like the increase in like prison populations that are a result of that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, the Violence Against Women Act was in the legislation built into that as well. And obviously, the Violence Against Women Act was a good provision, but uh, the increase in incarceration was bad. At that time, there was not an urgency to pass the bill, obviously, but it was mixed together. And for that time, people could have made like the argument like we should have a clean bill and vote on these two things separately. Or if we want to take a little closer, there was a whole immigration thing, how DACA was combined with the building the wall or thing. That's another example of where it was a bit more urgent because the DACA recipients' permits were expiring, their 2 year visa applications.
Hmm.
So that kind of made sense why they had to combine with the wall. But actually, I don't even recall. Did that bill even pass the immigration one, extending the DACA recipients, or no?
I have to check. I'm not sure on that one, unfortunately.
But anyway, that one it kind of made sense because of the urgency factor. But again, fast forward in this, like Democrats, I don't know what they're doing because in this situation, yes, it makes sense. Hospitals deserve money; they need to get it. But if Republicans are willing to give money to a small business and like it's ready to go, and you're holding it up to give more to hospitals, like I feel that strategically it may be possible, or maybe I'm being naive, but
I
I
mean,
feel
when
like
you're
you
printing
can get
money,
that passed.
at the rate that this government is, anything's possible. So I
Mhm.
think it's this. I think again, it's everybody in every sector of the economy, whether it be healthcare workers, sanitation department, hell, even if it's this warehouse, right? Like everybody needs help, from the accountant to the grocery packer. Everybody needs help. And right now, obviously, we have this general constructed hierarchy of what's most important. Healthcare workers right at the top. So I think trying to be the good guy in this situation ended up with the Democrats just looking incredibly petty. And the way I see Democrats is like, okay, you're going to stifle negotiations for days and make it so that a second very critical stimulus package is delayed because you want to guarantee the championed budget for the healthcare workers. Now, at the end of the day, I will always support helping anybody. It doesn't matter who, as long as they're critical and essential to the functioning of our, country as it is. Sanitation, again, critical healthcare workers, stuff like that. I'm always for that. But at the end of the day, this is not a the our like you could take a step back and look at the other side of the argument where, look at us, our liberties are being taken away. I have to be told I can't go to church. I have to be told I can't go to a concert. I can't go to this, that, and the third. And we're willing to take some overshoot in government reaction to this virus because we always believe better safe than sorry. And I think that has resulted in a government that's willing to work fast, right? And saying that now we're going to start delaying things, like that is such, it's so fake to me. and it's so very political opportunistic of them, because there was no bickering when you chose to bail out all these companies, right? With some regulations, some compromises, some caveats to how they're going to receive and distribute that money. They can't all just give it to the board of directors. But what that tells me is that there is a way for everyone to get on board, and they just lost their way. And it's now we're going back into that, that grudge match of trying to win political points. But that being said, let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah. So let's go into the political topic now regarding Joe Biden. So with Joe Biden, uh, obviously he has now become the Democratic nominee ever since Senator Sanders dropped out of the race. And as a result, he is now shifting the narrative of his campaign to focus more on Donald Trump. And specifically with this coronavirus situation going on, he's decided that he's going to focus on Donald Trump being too weak on China in regards to the dealings of the coronavirus. So, Mandarin, would you be willing to pull up that ad I just sent you a few minutes ago?
Yeah. So let me just go ahead and.
So we're just going to let the viewers listen and we'll provide some analysis on it as well.
He failed.
All right. So let me get this going here real quick. And then, all right.
He failed to act. So now Trump and his allies are launching negative attacks against Joe Biden to hide the truth. Here are the facts. Joe Biden warned the nation in January that Trump had left us unprepared for a pandemic. Then, Biden told Trump he should insist on having American health experts on the ground in China.
I would be on the phone with China and making it clear, we are going to need to be in your country. You have to be open. You have to be clear. We have to know what's going on.
But Trump rolled over for the Chinese. He took their word for it.
The president tweeted, China has been working very hard to contain the coronavirus. The United States greatly appreciates their efforts and transparency.
China, I spoke with President Xi, and they're working very hard, and I think it's going to all work out fine.
Trump praised the Chinese 15 times in January and February as the coronavirus spread across the world.
It's a tough situation. I think they're doing a very good job.
Are you concerned about its potential impact on the global economy?
I think that China will do a very good job.
Trump never got a CDC team on the ground in China. And the travel ban he brags about? Trump let in 40,000 travelers from China into America after he signed it. Not exactly airtight. Look around. 22 million Americans are out of work, and we have more officially reported cases and deaths than any other country. Donald Trump left this country unprepared and unprotected for the worst public health and economic crisis in our lifetime. And now we're paying the price. All the negative ads in the world
was your reaction?
can't change the truth.
Still going. All right. Okay, so that was definitely interesting. I mean, in my opinion, so this is not great. It's not a good look. I think
for me, there's a disconnect because right now, like for the past few years, the Dems have been attacking Trump for being too antagonistic towards China. Like, are they forgetting about, is Biden forgetting about like all the issues the Democrats have been pointing regarding the trade war and how Trump was too hard on them? Now he's saying like the exact opposite message, saying that Trump is too soft on China. Like, there can't be that huge dichotomy of like what we're talking about. Otherwise, like the messaging is inconsistent and like, I don't know what they're gonna do now because
I'm sure there's look, I think it's a double-edged sword for both sides, because the same way you can say Democrats have been very strict on how Trump has been very, very mean to China, very, very unfair to their markets by imposing these tariffs, these sanctions, hurting American business owners. And then he can say the same thing where like, okay, well, let's ban all travel from China. And I've been harsh on China. I've been, think he's pulled funding from the WHO. He says that, oh, look, they're propping up Chinese stats, and he's saying himself, oh, it's hard to trust Chinese stats. So the same way we can say to Democrats, well, didn't you guys say that it was irrational for him to be putting tariffs on China, and now you're saying that he's too soft? At the same time, when the president is asked the inverse of that question, yo, why are you all of a sudden all harsh on China when you were lovey-dovey and then harsh on them? So I guess it as an ad, do I think it's effective? First of all, I don't think ads in general are very effective. Nobody gives a shit about political ads. Like, mind you, like, unless it's like some bombshell revelation that comes out of the woodwork from this ad, then it gets coverage, then maybe it'll change some minds. This is not bombshell. This is not convincing anybody. It sure as hell doesn't convince Bernie voters to vote for Biden, and it sure as hell doesn't convince Trump supporters to vote against Trump. So I think overall the nature of the ad doesn't really work to convince anybody, because it's not providing any new information that people already haven't entrenched themselves in. And secondly, I think the poor performance aspect of Trump in this epidemic is going to be the one that might put the nail in the coffin. But it's not just about how bad Trump does. It's about, okay, if Biden was put in this place, would he have done better? And ask yourself, ask any American, ask yourself that question. It's hard to say yes or no. You can make an argument for both, and that is what should scare people, is that Biden is flip-flopping on policy about what he would do on coronavirus, whether it be in the debates or whether it be on his own policy platform. And that should scare people that, the case can be made both sides. It's that, well, Biden has dementia, well, not has dementia, but shows sign of some degeneration, doesn't show consistency in policy, and so therefore there could be a risk that, oh, he wouldn't be as good as Trump. Trump, on the other hand,
but see, like, you're right. Like, yeah. I don't know, because like Biden always likes to portray that he's like super good friends with Xi Jinping. And if that's the case, maybe he would be more reluctant to put the travel ban. Like, I don't know what the situation would be under his administration.
Yeah, I mean, I think the travel ban came out of a clear animus towards the Chinese government, especially when there was rumblings that they were going to try and blame this on us. And I think it just, again, Trump is a very emotional, ego-driven person. To some extent, that could be made an argument about the entirety of whoever is in bureaucracy at the highest levels of the American government. But I think at the end of the day, the ad is useless in convincing anyone one way or the other. And two, I think for Biden, any ad that he puts out, he needs to be able to defend. And hopefully he has decent people working. I mean, if he has decent enough staffers to beat out Bernie Sanders, I'm sure his staffers can hire debate experts that are able to, come up with reasons of why he ran that ad, even though he was critical of the tariffs on China when Trump was imposing them. But let's move on.
My opinion is not about the staffers. I just think you just got to give Joe Biden a bunch of Adderall, but that's a different story.
Oh, we don't want that. That's just faster, unintelligible nonsense coming out of that man.
All right. Next aspect of Joe Biden that we're going to be talking about, sexual assault allegations. So we mentioned this in the previous podcast. There was a lack of mainstream media attention. About 2 or 3 weeks had gone by since any allegations regarding that had been made by Tara Reid had been made public. And I think it finally made mainstream publications because finally Tara Reid filed an official police report, which is when it started becoming more accessible by like people like the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, etc. But the real news is like the reaction from the Democratic base now that this has come out. And what I found interesting is that I was recently on Twitter and I was looking at the Women's March Twitter account, and they made a post essentially saying Joe Biden has to take these allegations seriously. We want to know what his like official response is and clarify his policy on sexual assault, harassment, and consent, etc. And it seemed like the majority of the people were saying that the Women's March is now like an asset of the Russians it's Pizzagate all over again. They're gonna give GOP Trump what he wants, and I'm very disconcerted that the Dems have like basically politicized the Me Too movement and the Women's March in general because this is how they're treating any allegations to anyone on their base now.
Wait, so set the record clear. What is the Women's March ultimately supporting Joe Biden or not?
I'll read the exact Twitter post they posted. They wrote, women are looking for leadership. If Joe Biden wants to become a candidate that can support women, he needs to address allegations about his behavior and clarify his policy on sexual assault, harassment, and consent.
And you're
So again, it's not endorsing or not like,
basically
saying anything
they're
negative, but
telling
it's saying like they want clarification.
Right. They're just telling him what he needs to do to redeem himself.
Correct.
Look, I feel that if the Me Too movement taught us anything, it's that there is a tendency for people who don't know anything about the situation, who don't know anything, who weren't there, who weren't at the trials, to simply say that, let's just kill this person. Let's just like destroy their career, send them to jail, and always believe the woman. I am 100% for always believing the woman in that situation. But at the end of the day, when that situation occurs and when survivors come out about stories 20, 10, 15 years that have already passed the instance they were assaulted. Like, for example, there was a Democratic congressman, Al Franken.
Yes.
And
the one that resigned a few years ago.
Right. And his victim who survived an assault from him, where he grabbed her breast when she was sleeping. She said that it was not her intention to have him removed from the DNC, from basically the Democratic National Party. And Tara Reid has made it very clear that there is no democracy for her. There is no world that she would vote for Joe Biden. And that is all within her right. She believes that there is no excuse, there is no forgiveness there. Now, what people have taken that as a cue is to you're either for us or against us. Some people have taken a nuanced position of, well, it's understandable, and the justifications for voting for Joe Biden are there. The fact that your family may face existential threat to your livelihood if Trump is allowed to run for is allowed to be president for 4 years is valid. My concern with this is that I feel like what we learned after the Me Too movement, which was we should create a pathway for redemption for men and women convicted or accused of sexual assault, that there should be a way for them to not just deny and ignore, but seek to actually better themselves, learn, apologize, and grow. But the problem is the Women's March took that model and that kind of growth process out of the Me Too movement and took it too far. Because I don't think Joe Biden is an individual in where we can just let him kind of walk away by just giving us a policy brief on sexual assault or consent. Because I don't think, one, he's clearly apologized. I think the campaign has denied it. And second of all, I don't think the fact that simply giving a policy brief is the kind of mea culpa that we expect from someone who assaulted somebody. Right? The mea culpa, the coming back into society, the kind of, atonement you need to give to kind of prove that you've learned from your mistake. Especially, you have to prove it to survivor first, and then you have to prove it to us, because we take cues on the survivor, because at the end of the day, it is hearsay. It is what she said versus he said. And we have become ingrained in this culture that we always believe the women. And if the woman dictates how culture and society should feel, then you need to make your peace with Tara Reid first before you make peace with external organizations that you may not able to get their support for by pandering to them and not actually listening to Tara Reid. So, Tara, if you watch this, basically you've made it clear that you're not going to vote for him whatsoever, even though you understand there are existential threats that face Americans who will not live to see the 4 years Trump is in because of lack of medical access or whatever, or the courts not giving you the justice in the immigration case you may be in because Trump appointed his own, right? So it's a nuanced fight on both sides, which is being turned into a grudge match of he said, she said, and the he said people are obviously entrenched in the Biden camp, and the she said people are entrenched in the Tara Reade, prescription for her supporters, which is don't vote for Biden. So, in this hard, tricky situation to navigate, the Women's March just misstepped in trying to say this is what you need to do. Just give us like what you're gonna do if this ever happens again. And I don't think that's enough. I don't think, especially for Biden, to one reject it outright, saying that she's lying, or at least his campaign reporting that. I think the water's under the bridge on that one. I think Biden has denied it. Let him deny it. I think Tara has made it clear that he's a piece of shit and I'm not voting for him. And I think a lot of the queue of the kind of very progressive wing of the Democratic Party is in fact rally behind Tara. I haven't seen endorsements from any of the big four, so which would be AOC and Ilhan Omar and the works, and Rashida Tlaib. So it's going to be interesting. What's your take on this?
I mean, I think that when it comes to the Me Too movement, I think we have to have a different system when it comes to normal people versus celebrity versus politicians, because I know people don't like to hear this, but it does happen when there are situations when like people will use this for like political advantages. In 2018, Chuck Schumer was accused of rape allegations, but within 2 days they were able to disprove it because he clearly had an alibi showing that he didn't. But anyway, the point is that I think the Democratic Party is not principled on anything like it stands for, whether it's for the Me Too movement or even like Black Lives Matter, whatever the case is. I mean, take for example the example of the governor of Virginia. I mean, he literally committed blackface, and he's still governor, so hasn't resigned at all. And
Yeah, I mean,
I think it goes.
I think
Go
what
ahead.
this shows is that true setting morality, setting principles at 100% dialed is just physically impossible for humans. And this is not some sort of cynical super philosophy. It just is what it is. Like when you get into politics, you will get your hands dirty, and the ones that survive politics are the ones that are able to justify why they got their hands dirty. And it is not about this virtue signaling or this moral claim to having like this authenticity fetish. Like I am the most authentic representation of what a good human being is supposed to do. I call out the bad people. I hunt the bad people, and I make sure we lift up the good people. Like it is impossible to do that task in politics. It's not out of cynicism. It is of a blatant reality that you pretending to be so comes off as disingenuous because you don't understand the reality of what you're able to do in the political apparatus that people elected you to. If you're a congressman or you're a senator, you are limited by what you're capable of. And that's why politicians talk big and peacock themselves into this big display of emotion and justice, only to realize and have the people automatically know that this congressman or senator can't do shit. This congresswoman or, the senator or this bureaucratic leader can't do dog shit. So it comes off as disingenuous. And that's why Mitch McConnell and his ilk have been around forever, because he's made it clear he'll do whatever it takes to make sure the priorities of his constituents and his voter base are passed. And that does mean he's admitted to getting his hands dirty. Look at the Supreme Court nomination of Obama's pick in his last year, Merrick Garland. So
Yeah.
He was willing to do anything. The problem is Democrats are willing to eat their own to get what they want, to have this moral claim towards, keeping their hands clean of the filth. But the problem is the
Yeah, it's
filth.
very rare that you see Republicans actually eat their own. Like the only times I've seen it is like maybe with Justin Amash when it came to an impeachment situation. But besides that, it's very rare.
I mean,
I
the Democrats
but
pledged their hands in the filth this election cycle. Warren did it. Pete Buttigieg, Biden, going after Bernie with names and caricatures that are coming from the right. They're coming from the right of Bernie to attack him when they're supposed to be the party of the left, right? So, what this clearly shows to me is a blatant display of how Bernie just misread the room. Bernie should have been obviously more antagonistic. I believe Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk said that was one issue that I think Bernie could have been better on, is going after Biden's electability, because his perception of being more electable than Bernie is what got Biden the nomination in the first place. He got a bunch of safe votes saying that, oh, he's the safe choice and I'll go with Biden. And that's how Bernie kind of lost it. He misread the room. It's not about big political change. It's about electability and the ability to get shit done and not just bring up propositions, because it doesn't take much to bring up proposition. Now, granted, Bernie did awaken an entire generation, but I think the effort wasn't that well executed, because what he just showed them is if you have bold ideas, big progressive changes that are well based in the research and the evidence that indicates this is the way we need to go to in order to take care of all Americans and take care of this planet, it automatically loses because it's not based in executable reality, and Biden is, and that's why Bernie lost. And I hate to see it, but that's what happened. And he instead of going for the big picture revolution, he could have gone for that, but also made the point that he is more electable than Trump, because not just because the polls and statistics say that he can win in the states that Trump did in 2016. He needs to go after his goddamn competitor and say, look, this guy can't get a fucking thought across, at all. This Biden, who cannot string together a sentence to save his life on a complex issue. Just imagine if he's in the Situation Room when we have like a handful of the world's bravest and brightest minds on a critical military operation that could make or break our relations with X or Y country and send us into World War III.
Literally all Trump has to do now is like run replays of like what happened on the Democratic debate stage, like things like the record player thing, or things like him saying
exactly
what's it called, the Harry Lake situation, or I like kids jumping on my lap. Like what is that stuff?
I think it doesn't even need to go there. I think at the end of the day, the entire establishment media was taken aback about how honest Trump was about his assessment of what happens when Bernie dropped out. The fact that Warren hemorrhaged votes away from Bernie, I think him calling those things out just gave Trump way more political clout than he deserved, because you and I, and anybody with half a brain cell could see exactly what happened with the field when the base coalesced around Biden and Warren chose to split votes between Bernie and herself. So we see that.
That's another thing now. They're saying that Warren might be ranked as highest among the VP picks for Biden right now, which is kind of weird, because if Warren is being... Go ahead.
Seems a little shady. Seems that the Bernie people have... I feel like every time... I mean, the Bernie people have all the right to be enraged, especially at the way the DNC has treated Bernie, and I think Bernie being more open about the DNC really helped. But at the end of the day, I think he misread the room. He just simply did. Let's trickle into the next topic.
Next topic was just more politics. I was basically gonna go around the room and ask you whether or not that. I know, I'm trying to make us bigger than we are.
Oh my god! You're gonna see.
We got a ball in the corner. We got a Hodgeball in the corner.
No. You literally just said I'm gonna walk around the room, motherfucker. To get to me, all you have to do is just stand up and turn around back at the screen to me. I'm gonna take it. But go ahead. Just say you were going to ask me. You gotta walk around the room. I'm like, what room? Are you addressing the viewers right now in the comment section, or what's going on? But go ahead.
So Tommy Detour was on Twitter, and he was basically showing that in 2008, 25%
Well,
of
send me the
Clinton
link.
supporters.
Send me the link. I can show
Huh?
it to our. I can show it to our viewers if you send me the link.
It's a tweet. I can go get it right now.
Yeah, just give me the tweet. I'll
But
put it up.
sure. So basically, 25% of Clinton supporters ended up voting for John McCain in the general election. And people are so upset right now that the polls are showing that 15% of Bernie supporters might vote for Trump. I'm
Wait,
like,
so can you send it to me so we can
yeah,
read it together?
definitely.
Because I didn't catch like a lot of that, to be honest.
But as I'm sending this, assuming that Trump does win in 2020, 2024 happens, do you think that the establishment is going to be able to blame the left even more and say, look, they made us lose the general election again twice. It's all Bernie's fault.
Wait, did you?
Or are they finally going to?
Can you send it to me via Messenger? Because
Yeah, I'm sending it to you right now. Yeah. Well, I'm sending it to you on Twitter, but yeah.
No. Send it to me via Messengers because Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when 2024 happens, assuming Trump won again, and it's the Republicans are having their primaries, so are the Democrats. Are the Democrats going to blame the left again, or are they finally going to start to compromise and say, okay, we need more leftists in our Democratic primary?
It's hard to say, especially in 4 years, what's going to happen.
Because I'm trying to even figure out like who the progressive wing of the party is going to lean toward. Is it going to be?
That's the point.
Like,
That's the problem. I think that's the main problem is that we don't have a clear assessment of what the left looks like. You still haven't sent it to me, dude.
yeah, I'm going through my like things real quick.
God damn it, Lamar. Just send it to me via Twitter. Like it doesn't. You can't bring up a tweet and then not have it. What are you reading off of?
I'm going through my liked pages and like seeing where I was.
Why don't you just go to Tommy V Tour's page? Sorry for the incapability of getting evidence in front of you. Lamar's an idiot. V Tour.
Can you search through someone's tweet page?
Next topic.
All right. No, I mean, that's about it. I mean, that was the main thing I wanted to go on, like, see what the future of the party is, because I'm fairly confident that Joe Biden is actually going to end up losing this election, unless, like, there is something crazy going on in the convention, but it could happen. I've already been seeing a lot of articles showing that, oh, Joe Biden should throw his support behind Gavin Newsom or Chris Cuomo, and, like, more and more of those articles keep happening, and, like, I feel that conversation is happening in the background. No one wants to admit it.
I think it is a last-ditch effort for the establishment to finally recognize that Joe Biden ain't it, and especially see how, like, look, the establishment took a gamble here. They're like, let's look at the field and who is the most electable, who's going to get the most amount of votes. Turns out through polling, they saw it to be Joe Biden. Now, they're in a bit of a pickle because they just lost a bunch of support that originally was given to Bernie Sanders through the various demographics. They're losing with a Joe Biden nomination. So I think the DNC has always had a lot of soul searching to do, but I think it's got a pretty existential crisis if the DNC isn't able to produce a Biden presidency, because it is 100% time to go third party, and I think if Biden loses, I think it's going to happen. I'm convinced.
With the Green Party, or is it going to be like a new fraction of the Democratic Party?
I don't know. It's hard to say, but it's like, look, fool me once, fool me twice, but, third time's not happening. Not for the people that have been awakened by Bernie's movement. They've been disappointed once, and then you have the first time supporters being disappointed again, and you had the first time supporters for this election being disappointed for the first time, and we're talking about a lot of people who are engaging in politics for the first time via the Bernie campaign being disappointed. Losing on your first political engagement when you become of age of 18 to, vote, I think it's not a good look. I think it doesn't create massive amount of civic engagement. I think it either deters or enrages the current enrages people against the current system, and I think that's what's happening. But yeah.
I'm trying to think in 2024 among all the progressive candidates, the left-leaning ones. It appears to me like most of the squad is still too young and they wouldn't be ready to run in the presidential campaign in 2024. And to be quite frank, most of them aren't even born in this country, so they're not even eligible to run in the first place.
I think I don't agree with the contention saying that Biden is set to lose. I don't agree with that at all. I think Biden.
But under the premise he does lose in 2020, who, in terms of the progressive wing, would run in 2024?
His VP or Secretary of State.
That for the establishment perspective. I'm talking about the progressive wing.
Wait, hold on. So you're talking. Okay, so Biden loses.
So Biden loses 2020. It's 2024. Who do the progressives rally around as their candidate in the primaries?
Definitely not Cory Booker. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, of course. He's not even a progressive. But
all those other Bernie people,
that's what I'm saying. Who do the Bernie people rally around? It's not going to be Warren. Warren messed up her ties completely this election cycle. She basically smeared Bernie as being a sexist and ended up endorsing the person that actually committed rape in this election cycle.
If Bernie can endorse Hillary and come back.
What? What are you saying?
Bernie endorsed Hillary, and Bernie was able to come back and still beat down the establishment in some states.
Oh, I thought you were saying that's what Bernie should do in 2024. I'm like, what?
No, I'm saying the progressive idea
saying,
that you have that people are burned. I don't think memories are that long.
Yeah, I keep forgetting we're in a world where everyone has the smallest attention span ever, and
dude, 6ix9ine.
So much stuff happened in 2016 in the GOP primary, and everything was forgiven.
If Tekashi 6ix9ine can get out of prison, and everybody in the rap community hates him because he snitched on his entire gang, I can promise you that because of his young fan base, he's gonna make millions of dollars. And if you don't know who Tekashi 6ix9ine is, go look him up. He's a rainbow-haired, colored rapper who makes music, or was making music, and he just got released from prison on, grounds for COVID-19. So he's back. He's gonna start recording music or whatever, and he was sent to prison because he was in a gang operation, and he pretty much ratted on all of his gang members, and the entirety of hip hop culture just left him alive to eat. By the vultures, and he came back and rose like a phoenix. He just gained millions of followers on Instagram because no one gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit about street codes or hood codes and bro codes and how you're supposed to act. Like when you say Warren burned her bridges, I mean with who? You're gonna have 4 years worth of 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are gonna turn 18 and voting age around that time that could give two fucks about Warren's daughter sending a donation to an obscure organization that is critical.
No, I get that, but there's some things you can't recover from. Like with Clinton, she's over. It was never a chance that she was going to run in 2020.
Clinton is the biggest example of shit you can recover from.
You think Clinton could run in 2020?
No, I'm saying she ran in 2016. She was the Democratic nominee.
And I don't think she's ever recovered from the shit she's never going to get in her life.
I'm saying that she was within a sure shot. Everybody said she was going to become the president.
Okay. And now she's gotten shit about losing to the least favorable president of all time. And I don't think she will ever stop getting shit for that.
he was the least favorable president after she lost. He was the most unlikely candidate before she lost. Let's remember that.
She was. Repeat that one more time.
He only became the most disliked president, or one of the one with the most lowest average approval rating, before she lost. So she didn't even get a proper chance to show how she would be a president. So I don't think that's a fair analysis. But let's just cap off this episode by saying I think the future is so dynamic. I think we're going to see a lot of new players, and I think people realize it's not about your message, it's not about your record, it's not about your ability to fucking deliver. Trump has held no form of public position ever, and he was able to win. I think.
See, that's the other thing too. One last thing, like people like Pete Buttigieg, they actually give me hope, and the reason they give me hope is that not because someone that's
Pete Buttigieg just
moderate
presses the
can
fuck
like
out of me. I don't know what you're talking about.
the reason he gives me hope is that he shows me that someone can arise so quickly without having any background whatsoever. And hopefully that can happen with the progressive wing of the party. Someone can arise rapidly that we didn't even know about like 6 months ago and actually end up like doing fairly well in the nomination process.
Listen, I think his background is kind of what, I feel like the problem with having a background is that when I think here's my assessment on Pete Buttigieg. I felt like he talked big. He had big ideas, very Obama-esque style of talking about how we need change, a different way of looking things. We need to cut through the noise, this, that, and the third. I think the way he was talking and the way he tried to integrate his being a mayor of South Bend, Indiana, really fucked him up. Because I feel like if he has these big policy proposals rooted in his ability to execute in a place like South Bend, Indiana, I think the problem ends up being is that experience does matter in those big policy proposals. The way that Andrew Yang was able to build coalition and support was very surprising to me, because it was a fresh idea, it was brand new. And I think the beauty of Andrew Yang is that even though he's never ran for any other type of public office, he has served in government under Obama for a little bit in an advisory capacity. And I think the biggest thing with Andrew Yang and how he was able to draw support is because the expertise he brings through his private ventures. And I think history matters in terms of, like, if you're outside of government, if you're considered a successful outsider. That's what Trump was. Ted Cruz and all these people he ran against were outsiders. They were political outsiders. People from the Tea Party, people even right of people like, Jeb Bush and Rand Paul. Yeah, Rand Paul. So my thing is, I think when it comes to political history, like what Klobuchar and what Kamala and all these people tried to tout, and same with Biden. Biden ran big on political history. I think Trump taught us that, look, as long as you can be honest about the problem and have a vague general idea that is generally popular to solve that, problem within the country, you can win. But here's the issue. When you run on, half measures, like the entire field of the Democratic Party who was tied to the establishment, like a Pete Buttigieg, like a Biden, like a Klobuchar, like a Kamala, and you don't go for bold progressive ideas, I think the biggest issue arises is that Democratic voters don't put up with, straight up bullshit, right? Like, I think the Democratic voter, the average Democratic voter, not the card-carrying Democrat DNC operative, not DNC operative, I meant the DNC member, okay, not Alex Jones here. The average person who just votes blue doesn't have patience for the pomp and circumstance of someone like a Nancy Pelosi or someone like a Chuck Schumer or someone like a Biden or someone like an AOC, where there's a lot of big talk, there's a lot of diplomatic understanding towards a very dynamic situation. You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like we found refreshment in Yang because he cussed, he didn't wear a tie, he didn't care about the pomp and circumstance. He cared about getting the job done. And I think even though he may not have been a great president or a successful president, or may not have actually ever gotten UBI executed during his time as president, I think for what it's worth, if we're going to distill the presidency down to a popularity contest like it's always been, I think Yang versus Trump would have been great. But a Biden versus Trump, I think nobody gives a shit about the policies at that point if you can't even like win over a bully, you know? And Trump is a bully. He's the biggest bully. But when the bully wins and the bully outsmarts you, outclasses you, well, I don't think Trump is outclassing anybody, to be honest. But if the bully outsmarts you, the bully speaks the truth, and the bully is funnier, what are you going to do? That's the problem Biden faces right now. He's going up against a bully that he's incapable of fighting. He's got the big talk.
The only way this can work out is if like Obama comes out in full force and like starts defending, the
only way this works
Biden
out
on every turn.
If Obama just tags in and just straight up, what stops him from going to be a VP?
It's possible, but Biden's already committed to having a woman as his vice president.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it is possible. The only thing is that if Biden were to die, then one of his secretaries would take over. I guess the Speaker of the House would become president because Obama couldn't serve as president.
Oh, he can be a VP in name only?
Yeah.
I guess. All right, then. So
what's the succession? It's president, vice president, Speaker of the House, or
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's cut it here. I think this is a good place to stop. Pondering over the inevitable doom of the immediate future and the lack of hope we found in the long-term future 4 years down the road.
Podcast number 11 during a pandemic coming to a close. Hopefully we can get more of this done at least once a week. And I like this format, Manverse, so let's keep it going.
Yeah, me too. Just to remain professional, we should like have a 2-second delay between responding to each other.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there we go. It's perfect. I know you can hear me live and everything, but we should just have a 2-second delay. We should just be like, yeah, and then you finish your sentence.
Like on CNN, when like there's that awkward delay, they don't know what they've been cut already.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, peace out. I'll talk to you soon, and then we'll get another episode going.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Like a correspondent. All right, bye everybody. Till next time.